And me and my colleague Anders are going to give a presentation and a little overview of MariaDB, and we're also going to share some new information on what's happened with MariaDB during the last year and a half. And we're doing this together with our partner OSEC here in Poland. So we have a fairly packed presentation, so I think I'll get started. I'm going to do an overview of MariaDB as a start. I mean, what is MariaDB? Why are we here, and where do we come from? And then Anders, my colleague, is going to go more in details on migrations, because this is the major topic for us on our latest release of MariaDB, actually to help customers migrate, typically off Oracle and onto MariaDB. So these are things we're going to discuss today. How it can be done, and what kind of technical capabilities you can see in MariaDB. We're also going to share a few case studies, actual projects in which we have helped customers to migrate. So this is something that is happening here and now, so it's nothing that is just new from the drawing board or anything like that. So that's the agenda we're going to do. Well, we at MariaDB, we have a focus, and that is actually to provide a product, a database technology. We've been doing this for, well, the company actually founded 2010. But as you might know, we have our roots in MySQL. I personally worked at MySQL from 2003. So we come from MySQL. But during the last years, we have sort of made our own roadmap on MariaDB. So we know where we are going with our product. Why is this so interesting today? Well, we see lots of companies interested in moving off old proprietary architectures. I won't name any names, but there are a handful of database technologies out there who comes from old legacy type of systems. And what is really happening now is a movement over to open source to really help the organizations to lower cost, to get a more modern, lightweight architecture into their database technology. And another thing that is also very interesting is that lots of applications doesn't really need these old proprietary database technologies. So what you can see now is that more and more applications are being run on lightweight hardware and also with lightweight software. Well, MariaDB's our main focus is actually to help customers to get a better focus on their total cost. And when I say total cost, we're not only talking about licensing costs, because open source, you all know that open source doesn't have a license fee. I will come back to that later in my presentation. But what we also see is that lots of customers who is actually implementing MariaDB, they also can run MariaDB on much less expensive hardware. So the combination of no license fee and running this technology on cheaper hardware is really helping customers to address total cost on their applications. Gartner said this, I think it was 2 years ago, that lots of companies are actually moving over to open source. And if you're not considering this today, you better start, because this is definitely what is happening. And we had a customer actually help us, this was a partner more correctly, to compare MariaDB cost-wise with Oracle. And as you can see, it's like, if you want to run Oracle, yes, you can run Oracle, but be aware, it's going to cost you a lot. And what Oracle is also doing is that they combine different components to make a complete solution. And with MariaDB, you only have like 2 options, and you will hear more about that later in my presentation. So compare total cost is an interesting task when looking at MariaDB versus Oracle. Well, we have designed MariaDB. Historically, it's designed for transactional workloads, traditional database applications. We call that MariaDB TX for transactional. And there we have the server, the connectors, and all the different components that is needed for these type of workloads. But what is also new since a few years back is that we also have an analytic capability in MariaDB. We call that MariaDB AX for analytics. And it all is combined in one architecture. And the AX component is actually columnar technology. So this is actually helping customers to build data warehouses in terabytes on a technology that has a price that is so much more competitive compared to Oracle, Verticas, and others, Greenplum, and what have you out there for the columnar technology. So with MariaDB, you can actually address two workloads in the same architecture, and this is pretty unique, actually. To be a little more technical, we divide our offering in these three different pillars. The database server, traditional, then something we have developed ourselves, we call it MaxScale, and that is an intelligent proxy that you can put on top of the MariaDB server to help you with workload, to help you with security and other things. So this is a very, very popular component working together with MariaDB. And thirdly, we have column store, or what I just talked about, the analytic use case or workload capabilities. So these three pillars is what you get when you install MariaDB architecture. Well, who is using MariaDB? Well, there are quite a lot of people out there are using MariaDB, and we see exponential growth in acceptance of our technology. What you can see there to the left is the majority of the Linux distributions you have out there. And since Red Hat is a big player in the world and a very dominant player here, and together with OSEC, I'm glad, and I think you know already, that MariaDB is the default database in Red Hat Enterprise Linux. A few years ago, MySQL was there, but Red Hat decided to swap out MySQL in favor of Red Hat. The same happened at SUSE and at Debian. So MariaDB is the default database in these major Linux distributions. And since Microsoft is here, and I know that Microsoft has talked a little bit, yes, we are doing things with Microsoft. So there is a MariaDB possibility together with Microsoft and other cloud vendors. So MariaDB is spreading both in the cloud environment and through the Linux on distributions. We have lots of customers out there, and I will not go through them all, but we're saying that 12 million users. I mean, this slide is slightly outdated. I think we're approaching more like 15, 20 now. So the growth is really, really dramatic for us at MariaDB. What I want to share in this slide is actually that MariaDB is being used in multiple segments of the market. And one thing I'd like to focus on is these financial services, because there I personally work there a lot. And what has happened during the last years is that MariaDB has been accepted as an open source alternative for these customers who has high demand on security, typically. So what we did at MariaDB 2 years ago, we decided to make MariaDB the most secure open source database in the world. So we've implemented encryption functionality at rest and in motion, and you can also do blacklisting, and there are lots of things happening. And now with GDPR coming into Europe, these kind of features is a really, really big demand for lots of customers here. But financial market has started off dramatically here, and you will hear more of some finance customers we have who is using MariaDB for their mission-critical applications. And we have, like in media and social media, I mean, websites and things like that. Yeah, that's the historical installations of MariaDB. But now you see MariaDB being spread in more and more mission-critical applications. We also see lots of customers in, where is that now? In telco, lots of telecom companies, Telefonica and others are using MariaDB. So yeah, it's being used widely. We offer, as I said, an open source-based technology. There's no license fee, but what we offer is similar to what you get from Red Hat. We offer a subscription in which you get a package of services. You get extra tested versions of MariaDB packaged together. You also get support, 24/7 support with SLAs, guaranteed response time, and you get a handful of tools to help monitoring your database and make sure it's up to date. You get something we also call notification service, where customers get notified if there are some security breaches and things like that around MariaDB, around different technologies connected to MariaDB. So this is also a thing that is being very well appreciated by our customers. So the subscription we offer includes lots of these components that you can see here on the slide. That was a very short introduction to MariaDB, and now we're going to go a little deeper into our latest release that is addressing migration and possibility to migrate. So Anders.
Thank you, Magnus. Good morning. What's that thing? Oh, modern stuff. Oh. Good morning, Warsaw, and welcome. Let's get some technical, let's get some more fun. There are too few people here. I want this room to be crowded. I want us to have fun. We'll have a party. What are we doing at the party? What's more fun at the party than heckling our worst competitors? So let's get Oracle out of here, right? Let's get them out of here, right? Hooray! Anyone wants to get rid of Oracle? You want more of Oracle? You're in the wrong room, right? You want less Oracle? You want less custom-specific hardware? Expensive stuff? You want more of like inexpensive x86 boxes with truckloads of MariaDB, giving you 10 times the workload at 1/10 of the cost, at 1/10 of the effort, right? Built for a modern architecture. Not some half-assed closed-source stuff built sometime in the mid-1980s, built for a world full of VAXes and mainframes and not for a world full of Linuxes and x86 boxes, right? That's what we all want, right? So, I'm going to look at a couple of different things here. I'm going to start up by looking at migrations, right? How to get you off Oracle and onto the MariaDB train, where you all want to be. If you don't think you want to be there, you're wrong. Listen a bit more and you'll see why, right? So, there are different targets when you look at migrating stuff, right? Not everything comes in the same size. Trust me. I actually started my career some 35 years back actually at no other company than at Oracle Corporation. So I've done my fair share of Oracle work and a bunch of other database companies. I've been in the database market for 35 years. I've been involved with quite a bit of a number of migration projects. And they don't come in one size. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We need to look at what to migrate, right? So there are targets of migration which are more or less impossible. You know which they are when you see them, right? That doesn't mean they can't be migrated, but what it means is that migrating such an application is actually going to cost you more than rewriting the whole thing from scratch, right? You find these applications out there. You find them with large corporations having built applications sometimes way back in the 1980s or maybe even the 1970s, right? And now they're stuck with it. They lost the source code. The hardware to run it on is expensive. It's built around software that's like no longer supported. I got customers still running stuff on Oracle 8, which is still the 1990s, so that's comparatively modern. You know what the issue with that is? You know what worries these guys? What keeps them awake at night, sweating, worrying, twisting and turning in bed? GDPR, right? Oracle 8 is not bloody GDPR compliant, right? It's not. These applications are not GDPR compliant. They have to migrate them. There's no other way. They can't get out of it, right? So they probably have to rewrite. And what better to take the opportunity of rewriting with something better than Oracle, such as MariaDB, right? Then we got a bunch of applications that can be migrated. They're complex. A certain amount of work is necessary. Typically, you need to do some stuff with the application. You need to migrate the schemas. There's some PL SQL stuff that you might want to migrate and maybe not. Maybe you don't have to. We'll get into that eventually, right? And then we got a bunch of applications with sort of medium complexity. These types of applications typically are not complex in the terms of code or database complexity, but they might be complex in terms of like the amounts of data. They got like 200 gigabytes of data in Oracle that needs to be migrated, right? It takes some time to migrate, to export and import that data. You want to limit the time the system is down. So we got these applications, right? These applications are typically also reasonably well documented, right? We all hate documentation. I know that. No one wants to write documentation, but 10 years down the line from after you've written that application, you have to revisit it to migrate it, you're typically happy that there is some kind of documentation, right? And then we got the easy ones, the low-hanging fruit, to use an American expression, right? The ones that are really easy to migrate. Still, there might be issues in terms of like data sizes and all that, but whatever we do, this is basic and simple stuff to migrate. There might be a separate database layer. They might be running Hibernate or something like that, or the application might have a separate layer that can easily be rewritten. There's like few things that are not documented. It's not a plethora of development languages and all that. Have you seen these kind of applications where someone tries to maintain them and keeping them up to speed and being modern and to be modern, right? I saw one of these applications a few years back used by the Swedish government, heavily used by the Swedish government actually. It was written in COBOL and C and Java and HyperCard and Visual Basic, all of them critical for the functioning of the application. Was that an easy migration target? No. And before you ask it, which COBOL dialect was it? Because you know there are a couple of COBOL dialects out there, and the answer is both. They were using both Micro Focus and Ryan McFarland at the same time, just to make things fun, right? Isn't it fun, right? Instead of developing new stuff, instead of being modern, instead of going for like web-based applications and containers and all that, we have to revisit old COBOL code, right? Written by some guy in the 1960s who is now retired and can't be asked, and who had the habit of not documenting a single line of code he wrote. Oh, what a joy. Rewrite that stuff, right? But these are not it, right? This is the simple stuff. Java application using Hibernate, basic stuff. We can live with that. So what are we looking out for? When you go out there and the customer says, or someone at the company you work for says, we got one Oracle application, most of it runs like MariaDB or something, but we got a few Oracle applications, we really want to migrate it. How difficult will that be? What do you look for? How can you identify these easy targets and the complex ones, and how can we determine the complexity of these things? So let's look at that. Well, database procedural code, PL/SQL. It's no longer an issue, not the way it used to be. We can handle procedural code in MariaDB 2. And by the way, MariaDB 10.3, I'm going to talk about that eventually, which was just released, does have a PL/SQL parser in it. So you can run PL/SQL inside MariaDB. Not a big deal. Complexity of SQL statements, right? Oracle applications and Oracle application developers in particular does have a tendency of writing incredibly complex SQL code just for the sake of writing complex SQL code, right? Just for the heck of it, right? Sometimes you find that. Sometimes that makes things difficult, and sometimes it doesn't. But it's something to watch out for. Dynamic SQL, sorry. Dynamic SQL, right? SQL statements that are built dynamically. You can't actually beforehand figure out what SQL is run, because the application generates the SQL statement to run dynamically as you run it, right? That is typically a complexity. It might not be, but it needs to be determined and figured out, right? Data types, Oracle, most databases does have odd data types. This is one of my favorite subjects. The data types used in SQL is determined by the SQL standard, but hardly any database fulfills those standards fully, and the standard is also kind of fuzzy on a number of things. And these are for the normal data types. Then we have the odd data types, the structured data types, array data types, and what have you not. Stuff that's not in the standard. But even for the standard ones, the behavior of these is different. Sometimes it's no big deal. Most cases it's actually not. But we need to watch out for it. We need to figure out if this is an issue or not. Character sets and collations. This is another favorite of mine. You should know it. You're from a country who's also affected by this, right? Strange character sets, strange collations. You all know the difference between collations and character sets. These days, with like an internationalization of applications, and people can reach our systems through the web from any kind of nation with browsers set to any kind of collation, these issues gets bigger, right? We need to think about it. It's typically solvable. With MariaDB, it's typically easy. With Oracle, this is complex. So migrating into MariaDB makes life easier, right? But it's still something to think about and worry about. And then we got the special table types, which we don't see much about. We got our materialized views in Oracle. Nested tables, which hardly anyone uses and stuff like that. If people insist on using proprietary Oracle constructs, they should not be doing that because they are proprietary. It comes of the name. They're called proprietary because they are proprietary, right? Don't use them. So, getting a bit more technical, right? How does MariaDB help us in the situation where we now know what to look out for? We've been through the applications, we looked at it, we know what special data types are being used and all that. How can we map that to the features and functions that MariaDB can help us with? So let's go through some of the versions of MariaDB and how we progress, because this has been on our table for a long while. So let's start off with versions before MariaDB 10.2, which is versions of MariaDB that are a couple of years back old, right? Well, we do have a SQL mode setting, which means that MariaDB behaves a bit more in an Oracle way. It behaves a couple of settings. It actually implements a couple of oddities that you see in Oracle applications that you don't see in other applications. Check constraints appeared in 10.1. Yes, we have check constraints for a long time, but actually they didn't do anything. They do stuff now. So that's one of the things. Default values for tables and for columns in tables and things like that behave differently. We do a better job out of dealing with that. The outer join syntax. Oracle has had outer joins since the 1980s. Way before outer joins were specified in the SQL standard. The first SQL standard to appear was in 1986, and it did not cater for outer joins. The first one that did was SQL 92, and by then Oracle had already had their outer joins for a while, and the syntax for that is odd, but it's there. And regrettably, it's being used all over the place. You can get the same functionality without the joins using the ANSI syntax, but it's different, and it needs to be taken care of. So modern Oracle applications built after, say, mid-1990s and up, are they using ANSI SQL outer joins? Regrettably not. Oracle developers has a habit of sticking to proprietary features for bloody ever. Gosh, those guys. User-defined functions and stuff like that, we can use that to augment the migration. And moving up to MariaDB 10.3, because in MariaDB 10.3, we are introducing a whole range of features and functions to ease migrations from MariaDB, from Oracle to MariaDB. This work was largely sponsored by customers of ours, a bank called DBS Bank in Singapore. It's the largest bank in Southeast Asia by far, by stretch. They have a huge number of Oracle applications, and they wanted to completely to get out of Oracle. They wanted to skip Oracle completely. The issue was that they also had quite a bit of PL/SQL code in their applications. So they sponsored MariaDB to develop PL/SQL extensions, to develop a whole range of other things. And that's basically what I'm going to talk about here. They've been doing this for quite a while. So you might think that PL/SQL is new to us. Well, 10.3 turned GA a couple of weeks ago only. So are PL/SQL in MariaDB just a couple of weeks old? No, it's older than that. It's been around for a long time, actually. We've been having a special release built for DBS Bank whilst we have been developing this, and now we're merging that from the 10.2 release, which had a special version for DBS Bank, and migrating that into 10.3, right? So 10.3 does have PL/SQL. Does it have packages? Yes, it does. So if you look at something like this, here we got sequences, right? Sequences is a way of generating unique numbers and unique identifiers. In the database world, there are typically two means of doing this: by auto-increment columns or serial values, or whatever you want to call it, a column that automatically increments itself every time you add a row to it, or you have a separate entity called the sequence that generates a value for you. Both of these are actually in the SQL standard. We follow the SQL standard. Oracle does not. But again, we have the SQL mode Oracle thing, which actually makes us behave like Oracle if you want to do that. So we're the nice guys, right? Surprise. We're such nice guys, right? Compared to Oracle. We look good, and we're nice, and we're friendly, and we'll look better. Everything is nicer with us. Nice and friendly and cozy, right? So this is how sequences work. I'm actually kind of like sequences, but I don't want us to get rid of our auto-increment values either. I want us to have both, and we do have both. No, we're not leaving auto-increment behind. We have both of these guys, right? So the way this works and the functions and features we have, as I said, these are the basic things we do have. With the SQL mode Oracle additions at the bottom, so we can behave like Oracle, we can behave like straightforward, strict ANSI also, whatever. And it's a full featured sequence with most of the sequence values you would require. The biggest thing, I think, in 10.3 is the PL/SQL parser, at least when it comes to migrations. We can understand, and you can compile and run PL/SQL code. We used to support, and we still support, what is called SQL PSM. SQL PSM is the SQL standard stored procedure language. The SQL standard committee has a strange habit of not calling things by the right name. So whereas the rest of the world calls stored procedures, the SQL committee calls them persistent stored modules, which makes a lot of sense, right? Hence the word SQL PSM. Persistent stored modules, right? So we support both. We can run with SQL PSM procedures or with PL/SQL procedures. At the same time, you can call them. They're replaceable. You can use whichever of them. In part of implementing PL/SQL, we've also introduced some other compatibility features, such as support for Oracle-specific varchar 2 data types and stuff like that. Things like that, you can use them. They're automatically mapped to proper MariaDB data types, but we are supporting the Oracle naming conventions too. So these are some of the things that we do. The Oracle date data type, as you all know, is not a date. It's actually a date and time, but Oracle calls it a date still. Oh, fair enough. We can handle that if you want to. We can map that. We can map Oracle raw data types, the club and blob data types, which are also in Oracle. We support that. These are mapped to appropriate MariaDB data types when you have SQL mode Oracle switched on. No big deal, but useful and functional. When you're migrating, this provides a lot of help, right? So the row data types is actually kind of useful feature. It basically allows us to define a struct that contains all the elements in a row in a table, or all the elements or all the variables fetched from a cursor, right? It's easy notation. It doesn't provide any functionality that can't be provided in any other way, but it's useful and is frequently used inside PL/SQL, so we support it. So most of the straightforward PL/SQL support is in there. We support some of the enhanced Oracle SQL syntax, but not all of it, so a migration effort is still necessary. Even if all the PL/SQL procedural code is there, you still need to migrate parts of the SQL statements, probably. The likelihood is strong for that to be the case. We do support sequences, which eases things a lot. Intersect and accept, not much used, but you do see them now and then in Oracle applications, so sure, we do support them. Row data types and things like that. Oh, there was one more thing I wanted to discuss there, sorry. The system version tables, Oracle Flashback. This basically means that you can issue a query and tell the database to fetch data the way it looked at a specific time or during a specific period. Basically, the database stores the history. It's a flashback. Just as you doing flashback with like disks, you can do flashback in the database. This is actually SQL standardized since SQL 2011. We support it now, and Oracle support it. I think our support is better, but it depends on how you look at it. Anyway, we're supporting it. So, before I finish off, I'm going to talk about an example of a successful migration, which is DBS Bank. As I said, DBS Bank is the largest bank in Southeast Asia. They had a kind of odd notion of how they want to progress with the migration. They basically came to us and said, we want to migrate off Oracle. We want off Oracle. We like MariaDB, but you don't have any sequences and you're lacking PL/SQL. So can you fix this? And we give you a chunk of money to do that. And we said, sure, we can do that. And then the idea that we had was basically saying that we start with the low-hanging fruit. We start with the simple applications and work our way upwards to the more complex applications. And DBS Bank said, no, that's not how we want to do it at all. We want to start with the most complex application we have. And once we know that one works, we know all the other applications will be fine, right? That's how they wanted to do it, which was kind of scary. In the end, it was somewhat of a compromise. It was a semi-complex application that came first. They're in the process of doing this. They have been talking about this project, DBS Bank, at the MariaDB User Conference in New York for 2 years in a row. They are progressing on it. They have somewhere along the lines of 200 to 300 applications running on Oracle. They have a bunch of them in production already. They are aiming to have the majority of them migrated by the end of this year. I think that sounds too ambitious to me, but that's how they look at it. We'll see what happens. But at least by the end of 2019, they want to get rid of it. It should also be understood that this is an investment they're doing. They're doing this to reduce license cost for Oracle and hardware cost for boxes running Oracle. Yes, Oracle does require more hardware to achieve similar performance, right? It does. There's no way out of it. It just does, right? They want to fix that. But whilst they're fixing that, they still have their existing Oracle applications running and MariaDB. So for a while, for now, and for a couple of years, they will have higher IT costs for databases, but eventually they can get rid of a lot of Oracle stuff, get rid of Oracle license costs, get rid of hardware that only supports Oracle, and get into more expensive, run-of-the-mill, good MariaDB stuff, and reduce cost in the long run, right? They have migrated a couple of different applications. One very heavy, more OLTP style applications. as it says here, cost was a driver, but they also had a driver in getting towards open source. The good stuff with open source. Faster development, more agile development, the ability to look at the source code, less expensive development, less expensive hardware, right? All of the nice things. They had some challenges. They needed to do a proof of concept, right? Without a proof of concept, they were not going to get anywhere with this thing. There was this issue about application knowledge. Yes, not all of their applications were well documented, but they still had to migrate it. So this was a bottleneck, the internal competence of the applications being migrated, right? They needed to handle that. They did have dependency of certain Oracle features that we choose not to implement. This was a discussion with them. Should we implement Oracle compatible features to support these things, or should you migrate off them? Now, looking at things like PipeRow and stuff like that, these are actually, they're not really good things. We don't want to migrate it. We don't want it in MariaDB. You're better off migrating off them. Okay, fair enough. So they do that. So they get rid of certain things, and then they instead replace that with other things, more standardized, more in line with MariaDB, whereas other things are migrated just like one-on-one. We provide a similar feature to Oracle. They just migrate to our implementation of the same feature. So depends on the feature. And there was and is an issue with the application interdependencies. Many applications that depend on each other, stuff that's been growing over time. So it's not like someone developed an application, provided full-time, full documentation for everything, and then left it, right? It's been developed over time. They need to maintain it, and they need to continue maintaining it even after and even during the migration phase, which might be a long time at times, right? So of course there are issues. Of course there are things to it. But they've been at it for a couple of years now. They invested heavily in it, and so far they're very happy with the results, right? There should be more banks like this, here in Europe, here in Poland, here in Sweden, where I come from. These banks should be there, right? They should look at this example and follow it. Because this reduces cost, it eases migrations, it makes better flexible applications, which is the foundation for open source. So, in summary, before I leave you with this, what have we been talking about? Well, MariaDB is a full-blown, powerful and widely spread open source relational database. Exists in all the Linux distributions across the globe, more or less. All the standard Linux distributions come with MariaDB. We are very powerful. We are moving in a slightly different direction now. We are moving bigger to taking on bigger databases, to taking on Oracle, right, for migrations. And for new projects that you think you can only do this with Oracle, right? The way we build infrastructure with MariaDB is different from the way you build infrastructure with Oracle. How do you build infrastructure with Oracle? You got your Oracle box that runs your Oracle database. And if you need more applications to run on that box, you add CPUs and you add memory. And you know that run-of-the-mill, inexpensive hardware, that's boxes with 1 or 2 CPUs, maybe 64 gig RAM and stuff like that. If you want to grow bigger than that, suddenly all the hardware costs grows increasingly, right? Instead of having multiple smaller machines, you want to have one big machine. That's how you build Oracle stuff. We scale out. We have more machines, provide the same level of functionality in a more cost-effective and more efficient way, right? That's MariaDB. The migration from Oracle and out of legacy databases to MariaDB is happening right now as we speak. DBS Bank is not the only one. I'm managing one project right now that's happening in Sweden as we sit here and speak. There are a whole range of migrations going on across the globe. So there are a lot of people migrating. We are introducing features that makes it easier to migrate, and this reduces cost and it reduces complexity of your applications, right? everything gets easier and better. Isn't that wonderful? What a wonderful world we're approaching, right? Gosh, I should have been a preacher or something. Lower license cost and the drive towards open source. Let's not forget that. I think everybody in the room here enjoys open source and think open source is a good thing. But don't forget, there are a lot of people out there who are not yet understanding this. They think open source is dangerous. They think open source means not as good hardware as the commercial software. They're wrong. So let's go out there and tell them that is not the case, right? You want open source, because open source is really what makes the world tick right now. And tell you what, those guys who think open source does not work, right? Doesn't matter, because there's no way of escaping open source, right? There's no way of escaping it. And MariaDB has a whole range of features to aid in building new applications and migrating existing applications to MariaDB. And with that, thank you. Questions? No questions? Everything was obvious. Good. Go out there and migrate. Good talking to you, folks. Have a good day.